Hello ladies and gentlemen, Teo here, back with more Ever17. Currently, grappling with our newfound information about the date in the kid's roots. Still not 100% sure what to make of it, but it is, it's certainly interesting. It's 2017, so 2013 was 4 years ago? I said to you. You and I were alone in the security office. All of a sudden you had asked me to come see her, and had started talking about what had happened in 2013. No, I'd probably seen it coming. Just before she had spoken to me, you had hinted indirectly that she had changed her mind and needed someone to confide in. Her expression was solemn, like a nun about to seek redemption, whose eyes were empty of emotion. And at the same time, her gaze showed an unconditional compassion, impartial, demanding nothing, asking nothing. After a short while, that's right, it was 4 years ago, when I was 14, you began quietly to tell her story. Yubise Harukana had a serious heart condition. She hadn't been born with it. In 2013, when she was 14, she suddenly had fallen ill. One day, Yu had suddenly collapsed. She was examined at the hospital and the doctor told her, "It's very hard for me to tell you, so I want you to please listen calmly. You have a very serious heart condition. It's unclear whether you'll even make it to the end of high school." This meant that she only had 3 or 4 more years to live. A transplant was out of the question, and even with treatment, she would only suffer and they couldn't guarantee her a cure. There was no way left for her to survive. She had received a death sentence. But medical treatment is advancing daily. In a few years, we may still find a cure. So don't give up. You have to fight this illness. Oh, is this where the cryopods are going to come back into play? With the doctor's hollow consolation, emptiness took over her mind. 2014. Her fear of her approaching death was growing. One day, while she was at the hospital, she met a gentleman, let me guess, from Lieblich, who does not necessarily have her best interests at heart. Through the course of their meetings, she and the gentleman came to trust one another and became very close. It was a close relationship, like the bond between a parent and a child, between a father and a daughter. Yubise Harukana had grown up without knowing a father's warmth. Perhaps she was seeking from him the love from the father that she had never known. As for the gentleman, he had a daughter close to her age. When he found out about Yu's illness, he felt as much sympathy as he would have for his own daughter. Oh, so is this, Coco's dad, maybe? They were close like a parent and a child, joined by a strong feeling like love. Having built up a trust, Yubise Harukana one day confessed her fear, her despair and agony to him. With a serious look on his face, the gentleman said, "Come to my lab." His name was Shigezo Morino. Oh, so probably not Coco's dad then. Dr. Morino was a world authority in genetic engineering. In November of that year, after making up her mind, Yubise Harukana visited the doctor's lab. There are 3 types of immortality. The first is immortality of the body, the second is immortality of the memory, the third is genetic immortality. How would you like to try the third kind? The doctor presented this extraordinary plan to her with the calmness of a scientist, his tone matter of fact. Your heart problem was acquired after birth, rather than being something you were born with. So, if you choose the third option, you don't have to worry about passing the condition on to your children. There's nothing for you to worry about. So he's like a sleazy pickup artist? I kid. Ever since being told that she would die, she had been terrified at the approaching shadow of death. Not a night would go by that she didn't rail against her misfortune, all the while clawing at her chest in agony. She had given up on life and was no more than an empty shell. But this day, she was suddenly able to see a glimmer of hope. The doctor's words convinced her, and her way of thinking gradually changed. If I only have a few more years to live, I at least want to leave something of myself behind in this world. Her tenacity for life defied imagination. She finally made the decision. She chose the third option. 1 month later, December 2014, Yubise Harukana had the nucleus from one of her own cells implanted in her own ovaries, which then began to grow in her womb. Of course, Dr. Morino performed the surgery. She was pregnant with her new self. 9 months later, September 22nd, 2015, Yubise Harukana safely gave birth. "My baby, you're my sister. You are me, myself." Yubise Harukana loved the new child with all of her heart and gave her a name. She called her Yubise Akikana. That's right, Yubise Akikana was Yubise Harukana's daughter. And at the same time, they not only were mother and daughter, but also shared the same genetic design, just like twins. What a twist of fate. Did she do it out of the madness that comes from being so close to death? But still, look at the lively face of the newborn child. Look at how pure its smile is, how bright its new life shines. Could anyone watch something as simple as its earnest attempts to grab something and believe that the baby was a tragedy? Was it a sin to create a life? Was it a sin to want life? The baby smiled happily. Sometimes it cried, as if it were asking, is it a sin to be alive? Monday, May 1st, 2017. Yubisei Harukana, who is now a student at Kyumeikon Women's College, had started working part-time at Limu during the holidays. She wanted to find a clue about her father, Yoichi, who had gone missing 17 years before. Her mother, Yukie, kept telling her, "Your father fell into the ocean and drowned." But Yu didn't believe it. She held on to the hope that he was still alive somewhere. She had left her 1-year-old daughter, Yubisei Aikana, with her mother, so she was not worried about her. Oh. So, kid timeline Yu's mother is the grandmother then? Is that it? Am I getting it right? So wait, who's the Yukie Tanaka who died of TB? Now I'm confused again. She left her 1-year-old daughter, Yubisei Akikana, with her mother, so she was not worried about her. Yubisei Harukana's heart had almost reached its limit. She had given birth safely, but could no longer escape the fate which awaited her. There was only one thing left that she wanted to do. Before she died, she wanted to find out whether her father was still alive. The father who had disappeared when she was a year old. She had looked at his photo until it had become ragged and torn, but had no memories of his warmth, or ever having been held by him. For that reason, she waved off all the doctor's attempts to stop her and had come to Limu. She wanted to find out about her father. What had happened 17 years ago. She wanted to reveal the truth. As her story ended, Yu reached for a file that was on the control panel. She opened it and silently passed it to me. So the baby was your child? Which means you were lying to me. It wasn't a lie. She is my daughter, but she's also my twin sister. And she's another me. She is myself. I didn't know what to say. This was my sin. I know I'll never be forgiven, and will never be able to atone for it. Wait, since when is cloning a sin? Like, no one's getting hurt, right? Like, I don't see the problem. But, like I told you, I have no regrets. I'm glad I had her. I'll never forget the moment that new life was created. It was such an unbelievably happy moment. Now, oddly, like, everyone dying at the end of the kids' route would make sense, because that comes chronologically at the end, right? But, like, if Takeshi and Tsugumi from Takeshi's roots are the parents of, the kid and Sarah from the kids' roots, like, they can't actually die, right? Because they haven't had kids yet. So they both need to make it out alive. Which means that, like, the endings as we saw them don't work. Like, Takeshi has to survive. Right? Like, unless he's been donated to a sperm bank or something. Like, kinda needs to be alive to have children 17 years down the line. So, I wonder if there's more to the story that we don't know yet. It was such an unbelievably happy moment. The first time she said, "Mama, Mama," I can't explain it. It was more than a precious feeling, or love, or that good fortune had come my way. I felt as if I were wrapped in light. I don't care if I burn in hell. I don't care if I burn in the fires of hell for thousands, millions of years. But I knew I wanted to protect my daughter no matter what. I didn't want her to suffer. Her smile is so beautiful. Her tiny hands are so cute. She's everything to me. She's irreplaceable. Besides, none of this is her fault. She was welcome to this world, just like any other soul born who comes here. But at the same time, the moment I gave birth to her, I died. It was as if I no longer existed. You see, I gave all of my life, my existence, to my child. You showed me the photograph again. The baby in the picture was reaching out, trying to grab something. Hey, hello? Are you listening to me? You grabbed my shoulders and shook me. What's the matter with you, kid? You can't possibly have forgotten what year it is. Her words made no impression on me. What on earth? My mouth was dry, and the palm of my clenched fist was drenched with sweat. First of all, I began to think things through. The you that I knew, the you standing in front of me, Yubi Akikana, was born on the 22nd of September 2015. Her mother was Yubisei Harukana. That meant this was now 2034, 17 years after Yubisei Harukana's time in 2017. Like, yeah, so Yubisei Harukana is allowed to die back in Takeshi's roots. But Takeshi is not, Tsugumi is not, Koko is maybe, Sora doesn't count. Sora's allowed to die, Yu is allowed to die, Tsugumi can't really die. In fact, that's amusing. It probably is the same Tsugumi in both story arcs, which I imagine is going to lead to a very awkward conversation in the near future between the kid and Tsugumi. It's gonna be like, "Hi, mom." She's like, "What?" But still don't understand the deal with Takeshi. Although I guess now we have sort of the same thing going on with Takeshi as with the kid, potentially, in that we never saw them from the third person in their own roots, so they might not actually look the same, even though I was assuming they do. The other possibility is somehow Takeshi contracted cure from Tsugumi, and so that's how he didn't die, which would explain away the need for him to look two different ages. And there's like too many pieces of information coming together all at once now. I'm like having difficulty like reconciling like all of the mysteries I'm trying to solve at the same time. No, but wait. What about the date on the mail? It'd been received on 2/7/19. My voice came out strangled. It's 2034 now. Yukie died 15 years ago, which would have been in 2019. But the date on it says 2/7/19. Oh, that? You were worried about that? You laughed. Well, I can understand why you might make that mistake. You see? The date on the mail was written in the German style. German style? Is that a real thing? I mean, I assume it's a real thing. Not the Japanese order of year, month, day, but month, day, year. Month, day, year. Wait, I don't see how that fixes anything. What? I'm very lost right now. What are they trying to say? So you're telling me that wasn't July 19th, 2002. It was February 7th, 2019? Oh, okay. I feel like that was not transposed month, day, year. Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Yeah, I can see how that would be difficult to translate, given that like the assumption a Japanese person makes when they see a date written out and the assumption an American makes when they see a date written out are very different. Because Japanese does like a sensible thing, which is in order of like descending length, they do year, month, day, so that like, and which is really nice because like if you have files sorted that way, then they're like sorted chronologically, right? But American does like month, day, year, which is like not useful in really any capacity. Like, you could at least have done like ascending, right? Like day, month, year, right? But no. But okay, I think I remember hearing that in like an earlier version of this script, this got spoiled or like something got spoiled accidentally in Yu's route, and I assume it was related to this, because this is I can imagine is just like a giant hassle for the translator, where they're like, there's a date that's going to be confusing, but it's supposed to be confusing, but it's supposed to not be confusing. Like, my heart goes out to the poor people who had to translate this. I mean, certainly there are worse things to have to translate, but that one in particular is like super obnoxious. Anyhow, you nodded. Any other questions? I shook my head weakly and trudged out of the security office. I'd figured out the relationship between you and your mother, but wondered whether I should tell her. No, it's probably better that I don't. It's better for you in the long run. But first, I had to take care of my own problems. There was somewhere I had to go. What is it? What did you bring me here for? I wanted to talk to you guys alone. About what? Tsugumi was silent. She seemed to be afraid of something. Tsugumi perhaps already sensed what I was going to say. Her eyes gazed around wildly. Remember, kids, like I always say, it's Only awkward if you let it be awkward. Is it important? Yes, very. It's something I don't want the others to hear. Wait, I don't mind if they hear it, but I wanted you and Tsugumi to know first. So that's why I asked you to come over here. So what's so important? Hadn't Sarah noticed anything? Her blank, unguarded expression. She had to have noticed something. The May 1st, after Sarah met Tsugumi for the first time, she had looked totally dazed. Surely Sarah had sensed something. To be standing there calmly, she had to be in denial. Reason was telling her that what she suspected couldn't be true. The coincidence of meeting her mother again was probably too much for Sarah to believe. Well, are you gonna say anything? Could you hurry up? Sarah urged me to get to the point. Oh yeah, that's another thing. Like, I really want to know now why the group of people who is in the building in the kids' half of the story, like, why are they there? Like, for Takeshi's route, yeah, you can just chalk it off as coincidence, like the people aren't meaningfully related to each other in really any capacity. But like here, this group of people is like way too interrelated for it to be coincidence, right? Like, assuming that the Takeshi is the same person, you have a mother, a father, a daughter, a son, all of whom came independently. Like, all four of whom came independently. Like, I feel like you don't get there by RNG. Tsugumi said nothing, but her breathing seemed a little rough. Sarah, could you lend me your pendant and lighter for a moment? Alright. She took them out of her pocket and gave them to me. Although I guess given that they don't recognize the person in the pendant as Takeshi, that probably means that this Takeshi is a different person than the Takeshi from Takeshi's route. In which case, who the hell is he? I struck a flame, illuminating the pendant. Takeshi. This was the real Takeshi Kuronari. I held the pendant in flame closer to Tsugumi. Tsugumi kept her head down, refusing to look up at the pendant. Her brow was furrowed and she was biting her lip. Her arms pressed tightly to her sides. Her clenched fists were shaking. Look closer, I whispered to her. You've seen this pendant before, haven't you? It's Takeshi. The real Takeshi Kuronari is right here. The moment I said those words, Tsugumi's eyes flew open. Stripped of expression, she wore a face like a mask. Only her eyes burned with a fierce light. Wait a minute, what are you talking about? Takeshi? You mean Takeshi? Takeshi's the one in this pendant? No. The Takeshi we know isn't really Takeshi. I think he's lying to us. Interesting. The real Takeshi Kuronari, is your and my father. Tsugumi closed her eyes. She breathed out a long sigh. Oh, interesting. Does that mean that, like, my, like, weird off-the-cuff intuition, like, the very beginning of the story, that, like, something sketchy is going on with Takeshi in the kids' route is right? I just got thrown off the scent because he was the point-of-view character in Takeshi's route, despite the two Takeshis not actually being the same person. Wow, that's really funny. She breathed out a long sigh. I could see the tension leave Tsugumi's body. Hey, what's this all about? Explain what's happening. Alright? Before I do, I want to check something. I hesitated about what to say next. I looked above my head. The sky was full of stars. The single whale twisted and floated through space. Whale, where do you go all by yourself? Will you meet someone special one day? Snap. I extinguished the lighter. I gripped the pendant and the lighter in my hand. Tsugumi's outline was hazy in the dark. She was our long-sought-after mother. When I called out to her, warm tears ran down my cheeks. You're our mother, aren't you? Sarah's and my mother. Mother. You are, aren't you? What? Tsugumi slowly opened her eyes. She looked at Sarah and me. I could see the tears in her eyes. Mother, please say something. I don't blame you for anything. I've waited for you for so long. I've been waiting for you. Say something, I screamed at her. Sarah clung to my arm. Shaking her head, she buried her face in my chest. Her thin body was shaking. Don't just stand there, say something! Holding Sarah tightly, I stepped forward. No, I'm not your mother. Don't you lie to me! I know everything! 17 years ago, there was another accident just like this one here at Limu. You and Takeshi became a couple. Tsugumi was crying huge tears. Tsugumi tried to stop them. Her breath was ragged and came out in hiccups. Her face twisted as she struggled to keep control of her emotions. Tears welled in her eyes and rolled down her cheeks. Yes, that's right. You're right. I gave birth to you, but I have no right to be called mother. You have a real mother, don't you? Someone who took care of you? I wasn't able to protect you both. I couldn't take care of you. I pretty much abandoned you. I left you and walked away. I'm terrible, and I don't expect you to be able to forgive me. That's why I'm not your mother. Please, don't call me mother. Please don't. Tsugumi put her head in her hands and sobbed. At that moment, Mama! 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 Sarah tore herself away from me and flew into Tsugumi's arms. Following her lead, I clung to Tsugumi and cried as well. The first thing I noticed was her familiar smell. I breathed in her scent deeply. Covered in tears, wallowing in the warmth, I felt as if I had regained everything I had ever lost. The three of us held each other tightly, relishing the touch of one another, entwined our hearts became one. We were no longer our individual selves, but one collective identity. There were no boundaries between us. My whole being was filled with warmth. Oh, right, never mind. Takeshi doesn't have to be alive. I'd forgotten about the whole implied banging on the gondola that Takeshi and Tsugumi did with the whole fade to black thing. Okay, so Takeshi is actually allowed to die. So Takeshi's probably dead. Sora may or may not be, like, quote-unquote dead. But, like, they made, like, such a show of, Takeshi, like, going to great lengths to acquire to back up her memories on the disc, so I have to assume it's gonna, like, reappear at some point. Tsugumi's fine. It doesn't matter whether or not you actually got out of the facility in Takeshi's roots, because, like, she's gonna die of a heart attack, like, a month later anyways. See, who else was there? Coco is a special case. I have no idea what's going on with her, still. And don't know what's up with the original kid. It's, like, obviously a different person than this kid, given that this kid hadn't been born yet, but, like, don't know what his deal is. Maybe, like, that kid is this Takeshi? Does that make sense? Not really? Yeah, I don't know what to make of that. My whole being was filled with warmth. Beside me, Sarah's cheeks were wet with tears. Tsugumi was soft, and her skin was sweet and sticky. I recalled the long-forgotten memories of my mother's smell. It wasn't exactly the same feeling as nostalgia. It was primitive, something instinctive, a sweetness that had been wired directly into my brain. Mama! Mother! As if in response, Tsugumi pulled us closer, gripping us with a fierce determination. She buried her face in Sarah's and my hair, drew us close, and stroked the back of our heads. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Tsugumi's voice was choked up. I can't ask you to forgive me. I never once forgot about you. All this time, I've wanted to see you, find you, and apologize. It's alright, Mama. You don't need to apologize. It's enough just to be with you. As we held on to each other, we understood everything. Sarah and I accepted everything, understood and forgave. Reasons weren't important. At that moment, a quiet peace filled us. It was enough. We didn't require anything else. I relaxed and leaned against my mother. She was warm. I closed my eyes and was intoxicated by her warmth. Mother. A cozy slumber. A soft breeze under the May sunshine. Peace. It was like floating on the calm ocean. Swaying comfortably. Cuddled up together. Before I knew it, I had stopped crying. All I could hear was just our calm breathing and my mother's heartbeat. Oh, unfortunately, like, the fact that, like, the kid's roots take place chronologically after Takeshi's roots, and presumably in the same place, means that, like, there isn't some great mystery behind the fact that there was, Coco's graffiti on the statues. It's just, like, it's the same statues. Just 17 years later. So that's, I guess, one Coco-related mystery we can cross off. My mother's heartbeat. Thump thump, thump thump, thump thump. I was alive. Or maybe I had just been born. Thump thump, thump thump, thump thump. Everything was affirmed and accepted and forgiven. There was no me, nor Sarah, nor Tsugumi. There was only one life connected together. Just one single soul. In the year 2017, May 7th, 11 a.m., the men from the Lieblich were waiting for Tsugumi when she got to the floating island. Tsugumi, a carrier of the cure virus. To them, she was a valuable sample. Their eyes glared and mouths half open. She could see their dark, wet tongues. It was almost possible for Tsugumi to smell the reek of their excitement, like the smell of men lusting after flesh. It was a fetid stench, greasy and rotten. For it was Tsugumi's body they were after. What they wanted was nothing more than to perform human experiments under the pretext of making the ultimate human dream come true. By using Tsugumi's body, they were planning to gain knowledge, fame, and fortune. That was indeed their desire. "We've been waiting for you." One of them took a deep bow. Behind his veneer of politeness, there was an evil that threatened to spill forth, making Tsugumi sick to her stomach. Some of the others in his entourage licked their lips, swallowing their saliva like dogs gone mad with the hunt. That instant, Tsugumi kicked hard off the ground, breaking into a run. She ran across the wide surface of the huge artificial island, desperately scaling the high surrounding fence, and fled onto the nearby foliage. Their cacophony of screams and angry cursing faded behind her. Tsugumi hid and waited until nightfall. She held a single hamster to her chest. "Oh yeah, where's Chami? Has Chami ever showed up in the kids' route? I think he hasn't. Right? I don't think he has, which makes me curious again as to how we're getting to 7 people, right? Like, we were fine. Oh no, we still weren't fine in the kids' route because we didn't have Coco, or even if we had Coco, we probably didn't have PP. So we still weren't getting to 7. And we still haven't resolved the one left over after the game ends. Or, like, after everyone leaves. Damn it. I was so excited. I'm like, we have all these answers, but we don't have an answer for that one yet. At night, a supply-carrying vessel slipped out of the floating island's port. Tsugumi had stowed away on the vessel, hiding herself among the cargo. She was headed to the mainland. From that moment on, Tsugumi's life was consumed with one thought: how to escape from them. Although she wasn't a criminal, she avoided people, preferring to hide in the darkness, all the while threatened by ominous feelings of being hunted. Nothing changed after she safely made it to land. Every few weeks, she moved from a town to a different town, wandering in the darkness. She slept under bridges, under backstreet eaves, pipes pouring into the ocean, and even public restrooms. It was an endless cycle of running. She never had a second's peace. She couldn't turn to the police. She had no place to live, her identity was uncertain, and her age and appearance didn't match. The police would only doubt her. Information regarding Tsugumi had spread through the national police network, and it's only a matter of time before Lieblich would find her. Lieblich's influence even extended to national politics. There was nothing else for Tsugumi to do but to continue to hide in back alleys. She hated Lieblich. They destroyed everything Tsugumi had cared about and made her life a living hell. What's more, they'd taken away the love of her life, Takeshi Kuranari. She wanted to get revenge on Lieblich with every fiber of her being. Tsugumi came to hate this world, and her heart became even more hardened to it. 2 months had passed. It was summertime. All of a sudden, she began feeling sick. She knew she had stopped menstruating, but she didn't want to think about the possibility. She went to visit an illegal doctor who was well known in the back streets. Tsugumi was pregnant. She was sure it was Takeshi's baby. She'd never been with anyone else. She was pregnant. At night, she went to the deserted coastal area of a small nearby town. There were nothing but printing factories and abandoned houses. Unsure if it was a river or the ocean, she sat on a boat dock, looking at a neon sign by the highway. She touched her stomach. She felt a sense of awe and joy at the fact that there was life growing in her stomach, and that it was connected to her. The neon light glittered and flickered off of the water's surface. Tsugumi looked at the lights, with her hands on her stomach. Realizing that Takeshi's babies were inside her, she couldn't stop crying. They might have only been an inch big at the time, but the survival of the 2 babies outstripped the needs of the mother's body that surrounded them. Tsugumi almost had the illusion that it wasn't her who bore the children, but it was actually they who bore her. Everything that she was, she poured into her 2 babies. She felt that she was part of the babies, not the other way around. It was then that Tsugumi decided to sacrifice everything for the 2 tiny lives. Love was a concept to her, but if love could be brought into physical form to her, it seemed it must be the babies in her stomach. That was it. Love was growing in her stomach. Takeshi and Tsugumi's babies. Before long, the hatred she had felt towards everything had disappeared without a trace. For the first time, Tsugumi felt as though there were a higher power guiding her life. 7 months later, January 21st, 2018. Tsugumi was suddenly struck with contractions. When they came, the back alley doctor had gone somewhere. She visited a nearby clinic. She had no medical insurance, no identification. Most importantly, she had no money. When he found out that she couldn't pay, the doctor beat Tsugumi as though she were a stray animal. With nowhere else to go, the two babies were born in an old boat shack. An old woman was living there, but Tsugumi could not tell whether she lived there or was just sleeping there temporarily. It was this old woman who helped Tsugumi through the birth. "Oh, how precious, so precious! You've done a fine job, dearie." The old lady repeated this many times as she gently raised the babies in a tin basin. Rinsed, rather. The sweat-covered Tsugumi was lying down, with only a thin towel between her and a hardwood floor. Tsugumi's eyes gazed unfocused out a nearby window. Snow was falling outside. "Oh, darling, yes, a precious boy-child and a girl. Which one will you hold first?" The illegal doctor had told her, so she was expecting twins, but she never imagined that they would be fraternal. A bit surprised, she said, "Both at the same time." Wrapped in an old cloth, Tsugumi gently held them to her chest. "Not to worry, my dearie. I boiled them cloth, and the scissors would cut their cord in hot water good, I did." "Thank you." Tsugumi thanked her. Thank you very much." She gave thanks for the two lives who had been born safely. "Thank you." And these last words were directed toward the deep darkness beyond the window. The snow was falling. The two babies pressed to Tsugumi's chest with eyes closed, let out small yawns. The cure virus. Soon after she had given birth, Tsugumi's thoughts were turned to the possibility. If they got infected by cure while they were inside of me, and if their DNA was altered just like me, Tsugumi visited the illegal doctor. "Don't worry about it," he explained, laughing. According to taxonomic classification, a pure human would belong to primates, anthropoida, hominoidae, Homo genus sapiens. Tsugumi, whose DNA information was altered by the cure virus, was not a pure human anymore, but rather a subspecies of it. Let's just call you subspecies Cure for the now. Now, any kids who were born from Takeshi, the Homo sapien, and Tsugumi, the Cure, would technically be hybrids. Now, by the way, I guess I should tell you that the Cure virus only infects pure humans, the Homo sapiens. So, there's no way the Cure virus possibly affects your two little hybrids there. While not much is known about the Cure virus, some of the unique functions scientists have discovered, such as regenerating telomeres and regenerative healing, are inherited recessively. For blood types, without exception, all children born from a type AA father and a type OO mother, for instance, can only be type AO with a type A predisposition. Why? Because type A factors are inherited dominantly, and type O factors are inherited recessively. In order for a child's blood type to be type O, you'd have to have a mixture of either AO and AO, AO and BO, AO and OO, BO and BO, BO and OO, or OO and OO. It can only be one of the above, meaning that both the parents gotta add the type O factor to the genetic milkshake. Same goes for the Cure virus. Any child born from a pure-blooded sapiens and Cure will all be sapiens Cure and inherit the dominant physical traits of both. For them Rugrats to become full-blooded Cure, the parents would have to be Cure, sapiens Cure and Cure, or sapiens Cure and sapiens Cure. Any of those combinations, meaning that both parents have to be part or all Cure. And since these two little critters were born from a pure sapiens and pure Cure, they'll have the same physical traits as a pure human, and won't possess the Cure traits like perpetual youth. So you don't have nothing to worry about, alright? The doctor held up the two babies Tsugumi had brought and laughed again. Tsugumi didn't know his background. It was probably that he'd been part of Liebig's laboratory staff in the past, since he knew so much about the Cure virus. So you don't have nothing to worry about, alright? The doctor held up the two babies Tsugumi had brought and laughed again. Wait, oh no, never mind, this isn't a new page. But he didn't seem to be one of them. Tsugumi figured she could trust him. Among outcasts, there's an unspoken law. You don't go nosing about in other people's pasts. Tsugumi didn't ask him anything more, and he didn't demand to know about her either. A year after giving birth, it was winter again. Tsugumi had rented a tiny room and lived together with the two babies. Of course, Chami was there as well. It was a quiet, rustic little coastal town. It wasn't a city or tourist town. No fishing or farming, nothing. Just a dreary port town. During the day, Tsugumi worked for next to nothing at a sewing factory, while the baby stayed at a daycare center. She spent every day glued to a sewing machine from early morning to 4 p.m., and after that she would spend time with the babies. Her wages were very low, and of course they were poor. She couldn't even afford disposable diapers. Tsugumi collected small scraps of cloth, left over from the factory, and sewed diapers and cloth for the babies. Or clothes, rather. I don't know how to read. Despite the harsh living conditions, the babies were growing healthily. Their life was a peaceful one, and although they were poor, the poverty didn't threaten them. They were content. The three of them were always smiling. Mama! Mama! Oh, Chami! Chami! They were already beginning to talk. The boy had started walking a few steps at a time. The girl was able to stand, barely, as she held on to things. The girl had begun to speak, Chami! Chami! Which was very unusual for a 1-year-old. The boy, it seemed, grew faster physically, and the girl grew faster intellectually. Tsugumi tenderly watched over their cute gestures. She was filled with happiness. May 7th, 2019. The two babies were 15 months old. Tsugumi had taken them to the beach. The boy ran around in the sand, falling and getting back up over and over. The girl was sitting by the water, putting her hands in the waves. She was giggling, saying, "Cold, so cold!" Watching over the flat surface of the ocean, Tsugumi's thoughts turned to Takeshi. So live. As long as you're alive, live. Don't worry, I'm not gonna die. Those were Takeshi's last words to her. It had been 2 years already. I'm not gonna die. After saying that, he sunk to the bottom of the ocean, protecting the woman he loved, protecting the children right in front of her. You fool, you're a liar, Tsugumi whispered to the ocean. But at the same time, she still hadn't given up hope. No, he must be alive somewhere. He's a man of his word. Just then, a wave swallowed the girl, who'd been playing near the edge of the water. For an adult, it would hardly have reached their shin, but for a 1-year-old baby it was as big as a tsunami. The girl disappeared in a splash of water and was sucked out into the ocean like a piece of driftwood by the tide. Tsugumi ran as hard as she could, held back by the resistance of the sand. But before she could get there, something unbelievable happened. The boy, who was only 1 year and 3 months old, jumped into the water and saved the girl. Hardly able to believe what she had seen, Tsugumi rushed toward them. She carried them to dry sand. The girl started crying. The boy, seemingly unaware of what had happened, looked at his sister crying. A few seconds later, he fell over as all of his strength had left him. That night, both of them came down with a high fever. It was summertime. A year and a half had passed since the birth. All that time in the past year and a half had been filled with happiness. Nothing special had happened, and that was why it had been so peaceful. The boy was a wild one, and Tsugumi could hardly take her eyes off of him for a second. He constantly was putting everything, even Chami, in his mouth. Any electrical appliance he touched seemed to break, and he wouldn't stop jamming metal wires into the outlets. I believe Darwin would have something to say about your child, ma'am. The girl wasn't quite as much of a challenge, since she moved about less, but still Tsugumi had to put up with her stubbornness. She refused to eat things she didn't like, and when she got in a bad mood, she wouldn't stop fussing. And no matter how much Tsugumi warned her, she wouldn't stop playing with her brother's hair. And she would always demand for more Chami, more Chami. Those days were filled with being buffeted about by her two rambunctious children. But no matter how challenging, even those days were filled with happiness. All night, the three of them slept together, cuddled up on a thin mattress. Mama, Mama. Ah, Chami, Chami. Talking in their sleep, the two babies sought their mother's touch. Looking down at their sweet, innocent gestures, Tsugumi felt bliss she had never known. One day, her peaceful world was shattered to bits. It all happened so unexpectedly. Caught up in her life of happiness, Tsugumi had forgotten to watch out for them. She didn't know how they had found out, but they somehow gathered information and showed up without warning. Them, the people from Leiblich. With no time to collect anything, all Tsugumi could bring with her was her two babies and her hamster as she fled. So they ran, but it was obvious to Tsugumi that eventually Leiblich would hunt them down. As they continued running, Tsugumi thought to herself, even if I could keep escaping, would it really be happiness for the two children? They wouldn't be able to go to school, and it would be too hard on them to keep moving from town to town. Besides, if we ever get caught, what would they do to my children at Leiblich? It's too dangerous for them to be with me. Tsugumi made up her mind. She researched an orphanage she could trust and decided to leave them there. The two children were just too young. Even if Tsugumi had tried to explain, they couldn't have understood. With no other option, she left the pendant she kept with her, making a wish as she gave it. I'll come back for you. I'll come to get you, I promise. Being too young to understand the situation, the two children just stared at their mother crying. Weeping bitter tears, Tsugumi looked back many times as she walked away. All she had now was Chami. From Tsugumi's chest pocket, Chami looked up at her face in puzzlement. But even Chami's cute gestures could do little to ease Tsugumi's broken heart. She spent many nights in the depths of despair, crying in her sorrow. A few years later, by the time Tsugumi went back to the orphanage, the children were already gone. From that time on, she had gone through life, no more than an empty husk. Until that day, until that very moment, Tsugumi had kept searching for her children, wandering through darkness. Tsugumi finished telling her story and closed her eyes gently. She never once mentioned the names Hokuto or Sarah in the story, because those names weren't the names Tsugumi had given them. Someone else had named them Hokuto and Sarah. I left Tsugumi and Sarah. If I could, I wanted to stay with them forever, but it wasn't possible. There were still many unsolved matters that I needed to take care of. Listening to Tsugumi's story had caused me to suddenly remember something. I received a phone call before coming to Limu. Over the phone, a voice had said to me, "If you come to Limu, you can see your mother and sister." Oh, that was it. Before the accident took place, I had been waiting for someone at the rest area. It must have been my mother and Sarah. Tsugumi must have been roped into coming to Limu in the same way I was. Interesting. Wait, roped in? What for? I still didn't know what the answer to that. But I had some clues. The voice on the phone had been male. Without a doubt, I knew whose voice it had been. Alright, let's go beat up the fake, Takeshi. I ran to him. You aren't Takeshi Kuranari. Barging into the rest area, I demanded an answer from the man in front of me. I couldn't call him Takeshi anymore. This guy had been deceiving us the whole time. Look, I don't have any clue what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. I know the real Takeshi is Sarah's and my father. Father? Me? You and Sarah's? No, not you. Sarah and I are the children of Takeshi and Tsugumi. Wait, so Tsugumi and I keep telling you, you're not Takeshi. I'm talking about Takeshi from the other world. Other world? What the heck's that supposed to mean? World back in 2017. 2017, huh? And when were you born? January 21st, 16 years ago? In what year? 2018. I see. So how could you possibly know what happened in 2017? I don't know, I just do. What do you expect me to do about it? Okay, so allow me to critique the kid's strategy here a little bit. So, you have this guy, right, who has not only been lying to you for the past week, constantly, also probably trapped you in an underwater facility against your wishes. So, on the list of things I would not do in confronting this person are A, go alone, and B, tell him that you can, like, that you have, like, pseudo-supernatural powers of, like, knowing things that happened before you were born. Like, these both seem like extremely poor strategies when dealing with a guy who is affiliated with mad scientists, who, like, I don't know. Feel like this situation could have been approached better, but I'm willing to cut the kid some slack because he has been through an emotionally harrowing day. I don't know, I just do. What do you expect me to do about it? Besides, we're not talking about me now. Who are you anyway? And why'd you lie about the year 2017? Oh, right, that's why I thought the kid's route was in 2017, because this fucker lied to me. That's why I didn't suspect it earlier. Or, like, I might have suspected it at one point, but then I accepted that as, like, valid counter-evidence. Man! Look at this bitch-ass motherfucker. Look at that smug grin on his face. And why are you pretending to be Takeshi Kuranari? What was the reason you tried to trick us by repeating the same incident 17 years ago and by using the same words? Trick you? Trick you, huh? Think twice, will you, kid? For instance, if I was repeating the incident in 2017, how could I possibly trick you who were born in 2018? Practically speaking, it's impossible to trick you into believing the same incident from 17 years ago is taking place. You get it? Besides, how could you tell it was the same incident? How could you tell me I'm using the same phrase? How could you know the history before you were even born? Why don't you appear your true self? Who are you anyway? Somehow I couldn't say a word. Who am I anyway? The same question was repeated in my mind. Oh, I see. When it comes to your story, you clam up, huh? Alright then. I'll tell you my real name. Yes, as you said, I'm not Takeshi Kuranari. My real name is Kaburaki. Yogo Kaburaki. This is not a name that means anything to me. Is it supposed to? Yogo Kaburaki. Okay, so yeah, I was right about that. I just remembered my name. The kid repeated it slowly. Yogo Kaburaki. So Takeshi was lying about his, Kaburaki was lying about his age as well in the kid's route. I think he, like, said he was 20 or something. And he's actually, like, 30-something. Okay. Yogo Kaburaki. So I see. Way to go. I smiled and patted his head. The young Kaburaki smiled shyly. Without a word, the young Kaburaki went behind the statue and started scratching. He had a screwdriver in his hand. Ryogo Kaburaki. With thin, sharp writing, the young Kaburaki carved his name deeply into the statue. He must have been pretty happy to have remembered his name. Or was it so that he wouldn't forget it again? Although I didn't know the reason, he carved his name into the statue. He continued on. Without stopping his hands, he also carved the following letters. Koko Yagami, Yubisei Harukana Tanaka, Tsukumi Komachi, Sora Akanagasaki, Takeshi Kuranari, Pipi, and Chami. The young Kaburaki carved all of our names who had been confined here. He smiled happily after finishing up. The statue kept silent with its hands in its chest. I mean, I'd be really concerned if it didn't. The boy's name was also Ryogo Kaburaki, which meant that the kid from 17 years ago and this guy pretending to be Takeshi were actually the same person. He looked so young it was hard to believe it had been 17 years. If the young Kaburaki was 15 years old, that would make him 32 years old in this world. But the Kaburaki I spoke to looked around 20, there was no way he could have been over 30 years old. So, cure? Cryopod? I think those are the two main methods I can think of to decelerate aging. But I guess all this talk about like Rip Van Winkle and the Mermaid Tears means that there might be another one. Like it's been mentioned enough that I can imagine any number of methods by which you can circumvent the aging process. Which meant, before I realized it, the man who called himself Kaburaki had disappeared. He'd left a while before. I'd been standing there lost in thought for some time. I remembered back to the scene in 2017, which I had just witnessed earlier. I called around one of the statues as if being I went around one of the statues as if being called over to it. On its back were carved childish stick figures. 6 human-like figures and 2 unfamiliar animal shapes were drawn there. What? I looked at the statue. The statue pointed south. I looked at the back of the other statues as well. Surprisingly, there were similar drawings on the statue pointing to the sky. There were also 6 people's names and as well as Pipi and Chami carved onto the statue which stood with its hands on its chest. There was no writing on the statue pointing to the east. What is this supposed to mean? What is up with this world anyway? Puzzled and confused, my head felt like it was about to explode. I didn't know things that I was supposed to know, and I knew things I wasn't supposed to know. This must be why my head is so confused. I still haven't recalled any of my memories. Some parts of it had come back, but nothing really important. To begin with, I still didn't know what kind of person this Hokuto was. And at the same time, I knew what I wasn't supposed to know, and I could see what I wasn't supposed to see. For instance, the world 17 years into the past. About the legend of Pygmalion, the Tief-Blau virus, the Cure virus, Pipi, and Chami. I knew about all of them now. Wait, we never, found out what happened to Chami. It's a little bit relevant towards, the 7-person count, but, also I just really want to know what happened to him. Presumably he's immortal, right? So he's not supposed to die. So, where's he at? I knew exactly what had happened during the dramatic escape 17 years ago, and what happened on May 6th and 7th, and the world in 2034. I could sense even the different history flows in this world. I knew about escaping using the principle of a siphon and about swimming to the ocean's surface from 104 feet under the water. The third eye, Blick Winkle, those words were clear in my mind. And then, I remembered running into Miss Tanaka on the floating island. Or maybe more precisely I should say I could see it rather than remember it. Anyway, I saw her. The woman who was called Miss Tanaka, Yubisei Akikana's mother. Meaning, she was actually Yubisei Harukana. Although their relationship defied the norm, still Yubisei Harukana and Yubisei Akikana were mother and daughter. Wait, but isn't she supposed to be dead? From, heart disease? I thought that was, the whole reason she did the whole clone baby thing. Pieces of my thoughts scattered. I tried gathering them and struggled to come up with some kind of conclusion. It's 2034 now, and Coco was in 2017. I whispered to confirm the facts. Oh yeah. That means, Coco's, late 20s, if she's still alive. So, who could Coco be then? With that knowledge. She could be... I'm, running out of characters. The characters are, all starting to sort of, match up, OG, or Kid in Takeshi's route, and Takeshi in Kid's route. And then, like, the U's line up, and the Tagumis line up. So I'm, like, running out of characters to line characters up with, right? Like, now that I'm pretty sure Coco and Sarah are not the same person, like, I don't have a person for Coco to be anymore. And, like, I don't really have a reason to believe that she didn't get out. So either she's just, like, a no-show, or I'm missing something. I whispered to confirm the facts. Yeah, that's right, it was 2034 now. That was why Tsugumi had been so suspicious of us. Because the same thing that had happened 17 years ago was repeating. How about the others? Since Yubisei Aikana had been 17 years ago, she couldn't have known about the incident. And since Sarah hadn't been born yet, she wouldn't know either. Sora, being AI, couldn't lie. And she didn't seem to be lying either. So that only left Kubaraki. Did that mean Kubaraki was the mastermind behind this whole incident in 2034? That was the assumption I'd be going off of. Should I not have been? No, wait. There had been 2 others who had survived the incident 17 years ago. 2? Who am I forgetting? Coco. I mean, obviously Coco's one of them. But, like, is there someone I'm forgetting? I mean, there's probably someone I'm forgetting, but, like, Yubisei, Harukana, and Coco. Wait, but we just, like, figured out who Yubisei Harukana was. She's, like, the chick up on the surface, right? That was the assumption we had made? On May 6, 2017, Kaburaki, Yubisei Harukana, and Coco, who had been infected with the Tief-Blau virus, had been rescued by the mini-sub, which came to the pool in IBF. Oh, wait. How did the 3 of them recover from the virus after they'd been infected? Because the injection of antibodies made from Tsugumi's blood? But Coco hadn't received the antibodies. So is she just dead? That would be depressing. Because she had been under high-pressure oxygen treatment in the capsule pod at the time. Huh? No, even before that. Yubisei Harukana suffered from critical heart disease, right? Yeah, that was what I was getting hung up on. But Yubisei Harukana is still alive and well now. What's going on here? Well, I guess there's just one answer. It's the only explanation. Yubisei Harukana and Kubaraki must have been infected with the cure virus. Their bodies must have repeated 5 years worth of cell division, and when all their DNA had been replaced, they'd stopped aging. Okay. I'm with you so far. So yeah, like that makes sense. So is Coco just dead? That must have been why they looked younger than their real age. And Yubisei Harukana's heart disease would have been fixed by the cure virus. But still, is that really what happened? In a different history flow, Kaburaki couldn't see the image in the pendant. If he wasn't lying or acting, he must not have possessed infrared vision. And although I didn't have proof, my instincts told me Yubisei Harukana didn't possess infrared vision either. Oh yeah, damn it. I forgot. I mean, I could have easily waved it by, like, saying, like, Kaburaki is, like, full of bullshit, like, pretty much constantly. So, he could have just been lying about not seeing the pendant. Especially because, like, once it comes out who the person in the pendant is, it becomes real awkward for him. But, like, yeah, I just completely forgot about the infrared thing that, like, came with having cure. Then again, in the world of 2017, Tsugumi had mentioned that he was special among carriers of the cure virus. Perhaps she was a rare example of DNA replacement that had taken place safely over the whole body. That meant Yubisei Harukana and Kaburaki were not complete cure then? But it didn't seem to me that there could be such a thing as an incomplete cure. It's no use. I can't figure it out. But I still had far more serious matters to deal with. I needed to think about this problem first. The problem was, how was I able to sense incidents that had taken place before I was born, or in separate time continua? And why is the same incident as 7 years earlier taking place again? Oh yeah, I guess that's one thing that my theory of it's all Kaburaki's fault failed to account for, is the sort of meta information that, like, a piece of text pops up at the end of every route that says, blah blah blah, you haven't escaped the infinity loop. And, like, it seems a little bit melodramatic to call, Kaburaki's, like, whatever it is he's scheming, call it an infinity loop, right? Like, he's just kind of a guy, as far as we know. Like, he doesn't have superpowers. He's just kind of a jackass. He might not even be a jackass. He might have perfectly legitimate reasons for doing whatever it is he's doing. But one way or the other, like, he has not done anything cool enough to be called an infinity loop yet, I think. Unless he has, like, mad skateboarding skills or something. Which implies to me that there's, like, or which should have implied to me earlier, that there's, like, something real wacky still going on. Not to mention the fact that we still haven't solved the question of, like, what the hell's going on with Coco. Why is the same accident as 17 years earlier taking place again? It couldn't have been a coincidence. That would be really weird. Obviously someone had planned it. There was only one clue. Coco. I wanted to see Coco. I felt that Coco would know everything there was to know about this incident. But how could I find Coco, who just seemed to pop up randomly? I mean, I think this is, like, ballpark right time for her to start, or for her to show up at the statue? Right? Like, she might just show up, like, right now in front of you. That would be pretty funny. Oh, I know. I had a sudden inspiration. I had a hunch. At this hour on the 5th, Coco would show up in the Cosmic Whale Room. Oh, no, never mind. I was misremembering what day it was. Well, it seems that Coco's gonna give us some exciting answers, and, unfortunately, that will have to wait for the morrow. As always, I've been Teo. This has been Ever17. It's been a pleasure reading for you, and, catch you later. Peace.